All right, good morning. Really excited to have you all here. I'm Eric Youngstrom. I'm a professor of psychology and neuroscience and also psychiatry at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I've been to every Future Directions forum but one. Very excited to be back and having a great time figuring out new ways of sharing the information and ideas. What we're going to talk about today is stupid, fresh tricks that I have learned to be able to share information and ideas more easily. And a huge amount of what I'm going to be sharing with you, I've learned from Thomas Shaffey, who is a molecular biologist in Australia. The slides, we're giving away the slides. And so I dropped a link to the slides in the chat. And this is a bit.ly, this is a short URL that also will take you to a copy of the slides. So things that I want you to, so we have 70 minutes together, and I want you to get practical skills that you're going to be able to use. And I'm actually going to ask you to use a couple of them today. One is to learn how to Creative Commons license at least one thing that you have built that you want to share with other people. I'm also going to talk about ways of using Wikipedia, Wikiversity, Open Science Framework, other free platforms to increase the reach of the things that you're doing. Show you some different resource kits and examples that we've put up on different websites. And I want to build a network. I want to get, if you're intrigued or interested, I want to build a list of who wants to stay involved or who wants to learn more and keep the conversation going after today. So I'm going to talk about Creative Commons and copyright. And I'm 51 years old. I've been a professor for 20 years. I have published a lot of papers. Ain't nobody ever explained to me about copyright. And no one taught me about Creative Commons until I'd already gotten tenure, already gotten promoted. I wish I had known 20 years ago what I'm going to share with you today. I'm also going to talk about pre-publication and different ways that we can publish that are not going to be a lot more work for you, but are going to tremendously increase the impact and the control that you have over the work. So we've got a very detailed outline. I'm going to spend the bulk of the time talking about Creative Commons licensing and copyright. If that's the only skill that you take away, only concept that you take away from this talk, it is going to be a gift that is going to keep giving for you and for other people over and over and over again. So I'm going deepest on that. And then I've got a ton of slides, which are basically examples. And you'll be able to slow play going through the deck and see, oh yeah, there's another bit.ly. Oh, there's a QR code. Oh, I see how they put this on OSF. So you're going to have tons of examples that you'll be able to use as templates. So copyright and Creative Commons. So this is very, very new to me. No other human being has seen this next set of slides. You guys are the very, very first audience. And as I've learned more about this, I started off thinking this is a very dry, boring, technical topic. We're going to hear it is actually tremendous economic implications, tremendous implications in terms of leveling the playing field, giving people access to the information regardless of their ability to pay. Unfortunately, really life and death. So copyright is a legal concept that's intended to protect the ownership rights of the creator, and it covers writing and artistic works, versus patents are for inventions and processes. And this gets very confusing very quickly because different countries have different copyright laws. So when we put something on the web, we need to think about, okay, what's the law in the United States, but also what's the law in Canada? What's the law in the European Union? What's the law in Swaziland? And just thinking about our own country, copyright is complex. I didn't know that copyright starts with the creation of the work. Even if you don't write copyright on it, even if you don't put the little C in a circle and your name in a year, when you make something, the US law says you have the copyright on it. And this is great for us in one sense because we own our work, but it is confusing as heck in another sense because if somebody doesn't write copyright on it, you don't know, is this copyrighted? Is this not copyrighted? Is this okay to use or not? US law currently says copyright persists for 70 years after the author's death, not after creation of the work. And other countries are saying, hey, if there are multiple authors, it's 70 years from the death of the last author to die. And there are different rules for works for hire. And if you work for the NIMH or the federal government, then there are other rules. And I included a handy dandy link to the US copyright law. It is 370 pages long. If you pull down the PDF, do not try to read it. That is not what I am recommending. So copyright law, another problem with it is it keeps changing. And the idea of having a register of who owns the work, who has permission to make copies of the work, hundreds of years old. So we're looking at what many people consider the first attempt at having a register to keep track of who is the author, who's allowed to print copies of it. It's called the Stationers Register in London, and we're looking at where somebody got the rights to print Shakespeare's play, Richard III. And so there's always been this tension of who owns the idea, and there's been a tension between authors, which is usually us, and the publishers who are actually selling the journal, selling the book. Another problem has been registration. So with this Stationers Register, the way that you registered the work was you took a horse and went to London and paid and got your entry written in the one book, which was the entire book for all of England. Another tension is profit. Who makes the money? If someone is selling the work, does the money go to the author, or does the money go to the publisher, or does it go to a pirate? This 600-page book that I read about piracy talks about how one of the problems with having a book in London is when Ireland was a separate country, they didn't care about the book. They didn't worry about it. And if they could get copies of the play, they would publish it and they would keep all the money, which raises issues of enforcement. It turns out, so when you write your thesis, you have copyright of the thesis. You could write copyright by me at the bottom of the thesis, and that makes it a little bit more clear. I'm aware I have the copyright to this work. Or you could pay $45 and register it with the US government. I don't recommend doing that. Why not? Because it costs you money, and because the registry is not complete. Because you already own copyright, even if you don't register it. If somebody searches this database, it's not going to find most of the stuff that actually is copyrighted. Awkward. So here's how this has usually worked in academia. Speaking as one psychologist to another psychologist, it's us that comes up with the idea. It's us that does the study, gathers the data, analyzes the data. We write the paper up, we send it to a journal where volunteer colleagues review it. They don't get paid to do the reviews. And if it gets accepted, one of the forms that gets sent back to us with the woohoo email is something called a CTA, a copyright transfer agreement. And when we sign that, we're saying, I'm so excited that my paper got published. I'm going to give Taylor and Francis or Elsevier the copyright. I'm going to sign this document and say, even though I made it, I'm giving it to you. You get to publish it. You get to keep all the money. And the publisher makes the profit. This is a very weird system economically. We're doing all the work for free. We're doing the peer review for free. And if it gets accepted, we're giving it to someone else and they're charging money for it. And it is not a little bit of money. Academic publishing has profit margins of 35 to 40%. This is more profitable than Big Pharma. This has been more profitable than Apple computers. This is more profitable than tobacco. Not quite as profitable as Nike. But this is a huge amount of money, which they have been making with us giving the work away. But this is changing very rapidly. So everything that I've described up to this point is the world that I grew up in, the world that I went to graduate school, the world where I got a job, got tenure, got promoted. The internet's making things way more international, and countries have a long tradition of stealing from each other. Reading that 600-page book, tons of examples. Technology is also changing things. So the printing press revolutionized the whole idea of sharing ideas. Digitization is having a huge effect. And what used to be illegal and difficult and expensive now is just illegal if it's copyrighted. Making we all know this, copying and pasting a document on the internet, dropping in a link to an audio clip, it's easy. It doesn't cost anything. And in your lifetime, there have been, when you guys were kids, there were the Napster wars, and there were the issues with oh my God, online piracy and torrent, and making it really, really easy to stream videos. So open access journals, when I was getting tenure, open access journals existed, and the public perception was, ew, gross. You had to pay money to get your article printed, and the script has flipped. Now in the European Union, or if your work is supported by many granting agencies, they say, we require, it is mandatory that you put this in an open access journal. Why? Because they funded the research and they want the research to reach the most people. So the idea of, we'll pay for you to do the research, you do the research, and then we give it to someone else to make a profit, they're like, not acceptable. So the arguments for open licensing are information wants to be free. And if we're doing work and we want to actually help other people, there's a concept for psychology, then we don't want to create a cost barrier. We want to give it away. And this is a social justice issue. This is eliminating barriers to access for people who are low income from lower income countries in the world. The picture is Lawrence Lessig. Lawrence Lessig is a lawyer at Harvard who is the head of the Safran Center for Ethics. And he says there's another reason that we should rethink this whole copyright issue, which is things being cheap and easy are making it so that teenagers and young adults and people doing amateur things like TikTok, like Vine used to be, remixing things. It's easy, it's fun. And saying that that's illegal is criminalizing behavior that people who otherwise wouldn't break rules are like, I don't know. And so he says that's putting us on a slippery slope. He argues that copyright made sense in the day of the printing press, and strict copyright as written right now doesn't make sense for the internet age, when it's very easy to read and write and remix. And he argues that the way that things are written right now currently choke creativity, and he's got a TED Talk about it. So here's where it gets into life and death. So this is a picture of Aaron Swartz, who was a postdoc at MIT, who was the co-founder of Reddit, very active on the internet activist, and he got angry about the publishers taking the research that academics were doing and putting it behind a paywall and charging a lot of money for it. So he set up a server in a closet in MIT and downloaded all the articles that he could get as fast as he could get from JSTOR and put them up on an open website. The publishers brought a federal suit against him, and he was found guilty of piracy, and they sentenced him. What the first sentencing was $1 million, 35 years of prison that could get commuted down. He made a counteroffer. They didn't accept. He committed suicide. And Lawrence Lessig, that we were just looking at from Harvard, was a friend of his. And so there are movies on the internet and Netflix talking about his life, his vision. So what Lessig and Swartz and others came up with was this idea of, okay, we need an alternate system. We need a way of being able to document who made this and be able to share the information, especially if we want it to be free. So the Creative Commons license is not the only form of open licensing, but it's become the most widely understood and accepted. And the Creative Commons license has 4 options, 4 elements, 4 blocks, which you could think of as like light switches that you're turning on or turning off for the product. They all have 2-letter abbreviations. So BY is saying, I'm letting other people use this, but you need to cite me. You need to give me credit for doing the original work. Share alike, SA, is saying if I'm giving it away for free, you're allowed to use it, but whatever you use it in also must be free. ND is no derivatives. That's saying I'm letting you use it, but you can't change anything. You have to quote it verbatim, or if it's a figure, you have to exactly reproduce the image. You're not allowed to remix it or change it. And NC is saying no commercial use. You're not allowed, I'm giving it away for free. You're not allowed to charge money for it. So these 4 options can get mixed and matched together, and they create 6 different types of license. So Creative Commons gives us 6 different options and 2 public domain tools, which are saying, this is free. Anybody can use it. You don't even have to give anybody credit. So the public domain mark down at the bottom is a stamp which would say, we've checked copyright. The last person who wrote this died 70 years ago. This is out of copyright now. And so it's a way of stamping it so that someone that finds it is like, oh, sweet, I can use this for whatever I want. CC0 is a way that you could take something that you made and say, knock yourself out. Go ahead and use it. You don't even have to thank me. You don't have to give me credit. You don't even need to attribute it to me. I'm just putting this out there for people to do whatever they want with. And then the 6 licenses get progressively more restrictive. So CC BY is the most open of the licenses where you would still get credit, where someone would say, thank you, Youngstrom, for making this. I'm going to go ahead and change the color. I'm changing the font. I'm using it in a different document. CC BY share alike is the same thing as CC BY, but saying if I'm giving it to you for free, you have to keep whatever you use it in free. And C, a little bit more restrictive, saying you're not allowed to charge money for it. And C, share alike is, so we're piling on the restrictions. Now, what's really interesting is we can have our intellectual property cake and eat it too. You can have copyright and a Creative Commons license at the same time on the same thing. Copyright is saying you own the work. Licensing is saying here's what I, the owner of the work, am willing to let other people do with it. So copyright is like, mine, this is mine. And Creative Commons licensing is, here's what I'm cool with everyone else doing with the work. So both, took me a while to get my head around this. Wait, we can do both at the same time? Oh. And one of the things which is beautiful about those different types of license is when you see something with those letters on it, without having to email the person and say, is it okay if I use this? You already know. Yeah, no, they said as long as I don't charge money for it, I can do whatever I want. Don't charge money, give them credit. We're good. I can use this in my class. I can use this in my PowerPoint. And if we went, I'm not going to because Zoom slows everything down, but if we went all the way back to the very beginning of this slide deck, it said CC BY 4.0 is saying we're using the most current version of the license, Youngstrom and Shafi. So Shafi, when he did an earlier version of this talk, said CC BY, and I'm like, whoa, mind blown. That means I could use your slides, Thomas? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, and I don't have to include you as an author on the talk? And he's like, nope. Just make sure that you cite these slides came from Shafi. I'm like, wow. So what of these 6 options works best for academics? Well, making something CC0 is very, very altruistic, but it is a terrible idea if you are trying to get a job. It is a terrible idea if you are trying to get tenure, because you're saying, I came up with the idea and other people can use it and they don't even have to give me credit. No, you want credit. You want to be able to say my work is getting picked up and used by other people. It's moving the field. So the first option that you should consider is CC BY, because that's not putting on any strings, except you got to give me credit. You got to acknowledge that I did the first version of this. CC BY share alike, super duper tempting. That's the one that I gravitated towards first. I grew up working in community mental health. I do lots of work trying to get information into other languages and into underserved populations. And so I'm like, yeah, no, if I'm giving it away free, then other people using it should have to keep it free. And I've learned that has some unintended consequences. If everything is free, there's no advertising budget. If everything is free, then publishers have no incentive to market it, include it in their catalogs, put it on their websites. And the booby trap of share alike is if we put something with a Creative Commons license and make it share alike, we can't use it in an article which goes to a for-pay paywall journal, like all the top journals historically in psychology. So the way that this got worked out by the lawyers is, oh, if it's share alike, you could use it on a website that's free, open access. You could use it in an article, which is open access, but you can't put it in an article in Psychological Bulletin unless APA is willing to give away Psychological Bulletin. And APA is like, no, we're not okay with that. So the one which I'm using on just about all of my work at this point is the CC BY, the most open, the most permissive, that still requires that somebody give citation credit for the work. For translations of measures, I'm contemplating using the no derivatives so that we have a little bit more control over the translation process. So looking at how this works on the Wikipedia page for Aaron Swartz, the picture that's up on Wikipedia, if we look at the attributions, it says this picture was taken by Sage Ross, posted on Flickr, and he put it there with a Creative Commons by, gotta thank Aaron Ross for taking the picture, share alike. So he said, I'm not charging for it on Flickr. You can't charge for it where you put it. And Wikipedia said, we're okay with that because we're free. We don't charge access either. If we use this picture in a talk, then the old school way of giving credit would be to copy this by Sage Ross, Flickr, CC BY 2.0, and the URL, and we would use that as the citation. If we put it in the reference list for a paper, that would be what would go in the reference list. The other way that you could stamp it is with this HTML code, and that does not look friendly or fun to a human at all. But the part which is cool about doing it that way is that then Google knows, oh, this is free. This is a Creative Commons. And so you could do a search saying, show me free pictures, show me Creative Commons licensed pictures, show me figures that people have made that I'm allowed to use without having to send an email and sign an agreement. And so this makes it discoverable in web searches. So the order that we do these things matters. If you take your thesis and you make it Creative Commons license, CC BY first, you can still send your thesis to a journal and have it go through peer review. It's free for the publisher to use. I've done the proof of concept, so I have articles in Psychological Bulletin, articles in the journal that this conference is tied to, the Journal of Clinical Child and Adolescent Psychology, and I have chapters in books with Guilford. And the way that this played out is when they were setting it up for publication, they looked at it and they're like, oh, these have a Creative Commons license on it. Sweet, it's CC BY. We don't have to pay anyone to use this. And they're like, this actually makes it easy because we don't even have to get permission. We don't have to do the usual paperwork. We already know we're fine to go ahead and use this in the journal article. And because it's by, not share alike, they can still charge for the book, for the journal. It doesn't change their business model, where if I had taken the same thing and made it CC BY SA, then we wouldn't be able to use it. So doing Creative Commons BY first doesn't stop you from using the work that you're doing and anything else that you would do to try to get promoted, get a job, get tenure, versus if we do exactly the same work, but we do it in the opposite order. We take the thing, send it, give Elsevier the copyright transfer, and then we're like, hey, could I use that in my talk? Could I use that in a webinar that I'm making? They're like, you gotta ask for permission. We own the copyright now. That's ours. Thank you very much for giving it to us. And best case scenario, you've got extra paperwork to do. Worst case scenario, they're like, that will be $1 million No, they don't actually charge that much, but hundreds or thousands of dollars to use, which bugs me. I'm like, I made that. The order matters, and doing it in the CC BY first and then doing whatever we were planning on doing next takes you seconds, and it lets you keep control over the work. So here we're looking at a figure that took several hours to make, and we have a copyright on it, and we also put a CC BY 4.0 on it. And this exact figure is in a book which is coming out next month from Guilford Press. And other versions of figures are in articles in PsychBull, JCCAP. So doing it in this order first, we built it, we get credit, we continue to use it, we give ourselves permission to use it in the other work, and they're like, excellent, carry on. And so we have it on our site, we have the permission to reuse it, and it's going into the peer-reviewed article. So how to do this? First, we're going to do the easy version. I want you to think of something that you made. You could take a piece of paper right now and draw a smiley face. I struggled with the freehand smile there. Add some eyes. Be like, I want to give this away, but I also want to get tenure. And so now here's where the magic happens. Take your pencil, take your pen, and write CC BY 4.0 in your name. Whoop, there it is. You're done. You just said, I made this. All that I'm asking is that you give me credit. All that I'm asking is that, and you could reuse this in any other work that you want to, and other people could use it so long as they give you credit. We have accomplished our first learning objective. Now, if you want to do the fancy version, the high-tech version, then this website has a free wizard that walks you through which license will be best for you. And it will build the URL for you, and it'll also give you code. It'll actually mark the document, mark the image or the slides or the with an invisible watermark. And why that's cool is if somebody was sleazy and they wanted to steal your work, they could edit it. So you typed Creative Commons, and they could select that and hit delete and eliminate the letters that you wrote, but they won't get the watermark inside the document. So you're like, no, that was mine. They're like, no, I don't think so. I made it. And you click a button and the watermark shows up, and then busted. Yeah, no, you did actually make that. And that also is the thing that lets Google and Bing and the other search engines find it and say, yeah, no, this is the open source. This is the Creative Commons license. And knowing that trick is going to make it really easy. That opens up a door of sharing where we can put stuff on our websites, and Google makes it easy to find. Yeah, here's a cool figure. Here's a neat table. Here's a makes it much easier to share. And I've clearly drunk the Kool-Aid. I'm like, this is so cool. I wish someone had taught me this 20 years ago. So I got tenure using SPSS, which is owned by IBM. Microsoft Word, EndNote is owned by Thomson. Sakai was the only open source thing that I was using. And as I've drunk the Kool-Aid, I'm switching to open access for anything that I possibly can. So instead of SPSS, I'm using R. Instead of Word, I'm using Google Docs. Instead of EndNote, I'm using Zotero. And all of my teaching, I'm moving into Wikiversity, which is owned by the same foundation that runs Wikipedia, but a teaching-oriented website. So this is me working in R Studio, which makes R a little bit easier to learn how to use. And it opens up possibilities like Markdown. This is just I'm now in teaser mode. I'm like, I'm going to show you some examples. We don't have time to really drill down on these, but R I had a hate-love relationship with R. It's not as easy to learn how to use at the beginning as SPSS, but it does stupid fresh things. So here we're looking at, this is me writing the code, and then you can click a button and it publishes it as a web page, or as a PDF, or as a Microsoft Word document, or as slides. So, other thing which I want to alert you to is the Open Science Framework. So the Center for Open Science has a website which is paid for by altruism, paid for by grants and donations, and they don't charge us anything to use it. It is like a very clunky Dropbox in the sky that you can store files and code and things that you just marked with a Creative Commons license. You can put them all up there, and it's searchable, and you have control over how much you want to share it with other people. But the killer app, the reason that I want you to think about putting stuff on OSF.io is that when you put things there, you can give them a DOI, a digital object identifier, which is the prize that gets assigned to our work when it goes through peer review and becomes a journal article. When it gets published, they're like, you are now official. Some journals, you still get a print paper version, but what makes it real is a DOI. And OSF is like, oh yeah, no, we can do that. You can have a DOI without the peer review process. So if you take something from your thesis and you put it up on OSF, OSF will let you assign it a DOI. And if you do that plus the Creative Commons thing, you're making it very easy for other people to share and cite your work, even before you're done with sending it through peer review. The big problems with OSF are people don't know about it and don't understand all the different ways that they could use it. What we're looking at here, what we're looking at here is a list of student posters that students were taking a class with me, and they did posters, and the one up at the top of the list is Leah Follett, who presented this poster at the Future Directions Forum last year. And so what all these students did was take their poster, put it up on OSF, give it a DOI. And here we're looking at Leah's poster, and we see she's using the new format, and we've got a QR code here. You guys all know how to use these. When I do talks with continuing education, I have to teach a third of the audience. Pick up your phone. This code, where would you guess it takes her? It takes you when you point your phone at it. It takes you to OSF, to her page where she's got, here's the actual copy of the poster, here's the code that I used to make it. And so her poster has been downloaded 38 times. It's a poster. I'm used to like, woohoo, I got to go to the conference, and then I take the poster and I chuck it in the trash can. And this one stayed alive, and people are still finding it and using it. Same people that brought us OSF also brought us a preprint server. So SciArchive is run by the same people. SciArchive is actually on OSF. And I've been a professor for 20 years. I've been publishing for more than 20 years. What we're looking at is the very first article that I put out online as a preprint. Ain't never done this before. Nobody taught me how. So this article is not done with peer review yet. It still's going through peer review at the journal that we sent it to. And it's already been downloaded 400 times. and it's not done with peer review yet. The putting it on SciArchive, it gets a DOI. So down, whoops, I can't tell whether you can see my mouse or not. So down sort of bottom in the middle is the DOI. And the URL that would take you to the article is sciarchive.com, and then the last part of the DOI. So that's the unique identifier for this preprint. No jinx, but if and when this gets accepted, it's going to get a DOI as the woohoo, here's the official version of the article. And you can merge those two. So the tweets and the downloads and the citations to the preprint version count towards the official overall numbers for the final version. But wait, there's more. We can do even better than that. There is a open access journal that does not charge money to submit stuff to it. So it's a free open access journal, which is housed on Wikiversity, on that teaching-oriented site that I use. So this article is under review at the Wikipedia Journal of Medicine. And so if you could go right now to Wikiversity, find this article, and this version of the article has already been viewed 1,638 times as of this morning. So this blows my mind that it's possible to have people find the work, read the work, cite the work, even as it still is going through peer review. This particular topic is about dealing with this paper is about dealing with mental health issues during the pandemic, during social distancing. And so for me, the reason that I said, sure, why not? Let's try the open access approach. Let's try the preprint approach, is because this is a public health crisis. And these 1,600 views and 400 downloads happened at least 6 weeks sooner than they would have if I had gone through a traditional peer review process. So last slides are going through the Wikipedia medical-oriented journals. So this is a teaser why you might want to consider doing what I just showed you with that article still under review. Crucial thing is that you take your work and make it CC BY or CC BY share alike. So one of those two, which are the two least restrictive options. Tagging it that way, you can then put it on Wikipedia, on Wikiversity. And as you start doing this, the QR code's not useful, not as crucial today, because we're doing this whole thing online. But the reason that they're here is because when we originally were planning FDF, I thought we were going to be in a room together. And so the QR code, the value add of this is that in an audience where they're looking at a screen, rather than them having to write down a URL, they can just pick up their phone, point the phone at the poster or at the talk, and boom, now they've got the link, and now they're visiting your preprint. Now they're visiting your OSF site. So that QR code is a wonderful piece of technology for face-to-face interaction or printed interaction. So definitely use it on your posters. Definitely use it any PowerPoint talk or Google Slide talk that you're going to be doing, where it's going to be people in a room with phones. This is a wonderful way of disseminating. The bit.ly is a way of taking a long address and making a short version. So bit.lys are great for writing down. Bit.ly is also cool because it will track, this many people came by way of a phone. This many people came by way of a website. So you can get a sense of how are people finding your stuff. So if you want to learn more, the wiki piece is a different set of skills and a 75-minute talk, not a great format to try to teach the wiki editing skills. But if you are interested in learning more, HGAPS is a nonprofit that that is dedicated to bringing the best information to the people who would benefit. And we have editing sessions, and we have opportunities for people to get involved, get trained up, and get busy sharing information. So HGAP started as a club at UNC Chapel Hill, and then became a nonprofit incorporated in North Carolina, recognized by the IRS as a charity, a 501c3. And now it has sister chapters at Appalachian State, at UCLA, and at the University of Maryland. Morgan Anvari, Julia Iacobello, there are a whole bunch, many of their shout out to HGAPS and the people in the house that are on this session. Logan Smith, I'm talking to you, as well as helping out with the other sessions. There are Wikiversity pages getting built for this conference, and it's HGAPers that are actually bringing that magic to make it so that there's more information that's easier to find again and reuse from this conference. Lizzie Wilson has done really cool work using Wikiversity and websites to make it easy for people to find the best free assessments around mental health issues. And Lizzie took it a step further, saying, hey, if this is all already online, we could actually put it in Qualtrics and let them take it for free. We could score it for free. We could give them recommendations about what to do next, all for free. So this has gone from dream to reality. Took 2 years. We've got a QR code, so you could take your phone and point it at the slide. It's live. Actually, we have several different websites that are all funneling to the same place. And just to give you a sense of scope, we have 65 measures that you now could take for free, get scored for free, get a report and recommendations for free. And links to it are hosted on multiple professional society websites. And don't try to read this, just be impressed. Wow, this is what 65 measures looks like. And we got this. But wait, there's more. We also got this. And this. So all of that is up on the web. One of the examples of how people are finding it and using it is the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance has a screening center which has links to different measures, including a dozen now that we built as part of the assessment center, and they've been used 32,000 times. So this idea of we can take the work that we're already doing, take the tip sheets. Here's an exercise to do in therapy. Here's a great CBT tool. Here's a neat behavior tracking chart. And we have tons of these things that are getting shared over our professional listservs. And people are like, sure, go ahead and use it. When you get forwarded it by a friend without context, when you get one of these resources and you're looking at it, you're like, man, I would love to use that. Am I allowed to use that? Am I allowed to use that even if I'm charging for therapy? Am I allowed to use that in my dissertation? You could email and ask for permission, but if the person knew the CC BY trick, if the person knew the CC BY share alike and they put that on the thing, then the question's already answered. You know, yeah, no, sweet, I am allowed to use that. And you know exactly how you're allowed to use it. So last part, I want to just give you a sense of how getting the hang of using these preprints and Creative Commons and moving our teaching onto Wikiversity and thinking about Wikipedia as a way of disseminating, of getting information out to the general public. Wikipedia is what the world is using for information about medical issues. Is that poison ivy? What is a good treatment for a bee sting? Is therapy actually helpful? Wikipedia is the most visited site, slightly more visited than the NIH, more visited than WebMD, way more visited than the World Health Organization. Wikipedia is the 5th most visited site on the entire internet. It's available in 295 languages. And for comparison, my honors thesis and probably my master's thesis were read by my committee, by Mom, and my grandfather finished my honors thesis, but he confessed to me, Eric, I love you and I'm really proud of you, but I couldn't finish your master's. So our thesis gets read by a tiny audience. If we get it into a journal, which doesn't happen to most theses, then that's usually around 800 reads. If we get it into a top 5% journal, then we're up to maybe 3,000 reads. The middle of the pack Wikipedia page gets 10,000 reads per year. And a top 5% Wikipedia page gets 1 million reads per year. And it's getting read by the general public, but also by med students, also by practicing doctors, also by research scientists, also by Congress staffers. So the point that Shafi made is when you write a grant and it's getting reviewed by people who are smart, but don't know exactly the area that you're working in, what they're going to do is a Google search, and Google is going to put the Wikipedia page on the first screen full of hits. So your funding agencies, our funding agencies, are relying on Wikipedia for quick information about what do we know about this topic? What's important about this topic? So Shafi came to the APA conference last year, and he's a molecular biologist, and he said, I don't know anything about psychology. And day one, he went to a bunch of talks at APA and wrote down, these are what the talks are about. This is what is the hot topic list in psychology right now. And then he said, is there a Wikipedia page on the topic? And his talk on day two, this is one of his slides, and he's like, so I'm not a psychologist, but these are the things that I hear you talking about. And yes, they have a Wikipedia page, and they're getting 100,000 to 1 million views a year. If psychology really wants to help people, he's like, this is a golden opportunity to reach more people. This is the article on coronavirus. 4 edits before lunch, 1,000 revisions since Valentine's Day. And it gets viewed at the peak over in December. It was getting viewed 1 million times per day. So Wikipedia has a way of rating the importance of the article and the quality of the article. And the accuracy of Wikipedia articles now is tied or better than Encyclopedia Britannica, which is why Britannica is not selling hard copy versions anymore. Wikipedia is a different publishing environment, and so if you're interested in learning more about this, definitely sign up so that we can get in touch and talk more. There's going to be workshops at APA and ABCT. We're not sure yet whether ABCT is going to be face-to-face or online, but a whole bunch. It's taken me several years to get the hang of this. I feel like we're finally getting good at it. So some advantages to thinking about Wiki first for your thesis, your papers, your work. It's free. There's no publication charge. In terms of reach, fifth most visited site on the internet, and it works very, very closely with number one, which is Google. Going to an online format also makes it possible to have color, which would cost extra in a paper format. It makes it possible to have animation, to have links that take people to resources. As I've gotten the hang of it, I'm like, wow, this is actually much better in terms of functionality and implementation support. So we have accomplished another learning objective. Woohoo! So I am going to blaze through, we've got examples. This would be the supplemental materials. This is the appendix. So we've got pages that we've built around the assessments, and you could click a button and get a printed book copy of this. I think you guys can still see my camera as well. So if you click that print a book version, this is what I got a year ago. So it's 300 pages long, cost 25 bucks with shipping, and it was mostly the shipping. And the pages that we've edited on Wikipedia have been viewed 150 million times so far. So because it is free, we have been able to do this without a lot of money. HGAPS has built 56 pages. So the first version of this slide was from end of April 20th. So we've made another 8 pages since April 20th of this year. In April, they had been viewed 60,000 times. Now they've been viewed 108,000 times. So that's almost 50,000 in 6 weeks, 10,000 views a week. That is, mind blown. And the assessment pages that we've been working on longer, we're up over 200, and they're up over 250,000 views. Then we've got examples. The telepsychology page, Dr. Anna Van Meter made, that's our youngest page, and it's already up over 20,000 views. And these are infographics that students have made, and you can see, so these are visually attractive. They've got QR codes. They've got URLs that take you to more information. So these are pretty. They're aesthetically pleasing and engaging, and they're using the techniques that we've talked about to make it easy for people to get even more information. And you can see at the bottom, these are Creative Commons licensed. So Anna, Dr. Van Meter was like, yes, I can use these on the website. This logo down here is what the wizard will add along with the watermark. So we're figuring out different ways of organizing this for different audiences. And we've talked about ways that we're using this to take, I got tenure doing research on assessment. And I'm like, you know what would be awesome would be for those better assessments actually to help people. And so this is giving you a view from 20,000 feet of what would that look like combining your research program with Wikipedia, Wikiversity, Open Science Framework. So the copies of the measure are on OSF. The description of how would you assess for depression is on Wikipedia, and the technical information about how to score it, how to interpret it. Here's the code for doing reliability and factor analysis with it. All of that's on Wikiversity and OSF. And as we get more students and early career people involved, you guys are figuring out really cool ways. So the Assessment Center now has a TikTok, which is advertising the Assessment Center, actually has several. And we are taking information and remixing it exactly as Lessig and Schwartz want. to make it more accessible and organized for different audiences, like people working in school mental health. So we are coming down the home stretch, and what I want to finish on is, this is the slide that I want to close on, last learning objective. Going past it, we have the thank you slide and the citation for the presentation. So last tip, pro tip that I have is, if you're going to do the Creative Commons licensing thing, what is a really nice extra touch is including the citation, so that people, you're making it easy for them to do the right thing. I'm giving you these slides for free. You're allowed to use them however you want. All that Thomas and I ask is that you give us a citation. And here, this is in APA style. This is the exact citation that I want you to use. So if you do this with your poster, with any of your work, my last pro tip is, give them the citation. We're a bunch of psychologists. Give them the citation in APA style so they can just copy and paste. And they're like, wow, that was so considerate and so awesome that you're giving me all the stuff to use for free. And if you want more information, especially about the wiki editing or the making the infographics, click this link. Give your contact info, give me your contact, tell me how you want me to reach out to you, tell me which parts you're most interested in, and we'll follow up. Thank you.